In 1959, as you know, there was a triumph of the Cuban Revolution, and of course, against this triumph, where all of those people were very rich in Cuba, they practically owned Cuba, and they left Cuba to the United States with all this money that belonged to the Cuban people, and they founded themselves there. And since then, they started to make organizations that were trying to bring down the Cuban system, the Cuban economy. It was a war, actually, that still goes on because those groups still work in Miami. The way these groups found to bring down the Cuban Revolution was through aggressive actions. They have been putting bombs in hotels, in airplanes. They have fumigated our crops, our animals. They for example, in 1976, there's a plane that came from Barbados with our fencing team, and they put a bomb and everybody died, besides also 3 foreigners that were traveling to Cuba. These actions is very hard for us to know that the press won't cover it as much, but these actions has cost the life of more than 3,000 Cubans and have left disabled more than 2,099. That's why, and because the U.S. government didn't do a thing against this, these 5 went to Miami. These 5 men tried to knew or to get information from these organizations in order to know when and what and how they were going to attack Cuba again. In 1998, the United States authorities told the Cuban authorities that they wanted to cooperate against these organizations, a thing that they never did before. In fact, they knew about their existence, they protected these men. But Cuba, in an act of good faith, received a delegation from the U.S. government and gave these men from the FBI, officials from the FBI, all the information about these terrorist organizations, these terrorists, and where they live and what they have done and what they will do. But instead of arresting these terrorists, the United States authorities, they decided to to know where the source of this information was, and then they arrested the 5. They arrested them in 1998. They arrested them and they were put in punishment cells for 17 months, and since then they have been denied most of the legal rights and the human rights. The trial, as you can hear later, was unfair. It was in Miami, not the right venue, because this is where these organizations meet and where these organizations have also killed and destroyed places where people in the United States talk about and want a normal relationship between Cuba and the United States. They were tried first to be convicted of espionage, but it was impossible for them to convict them of espionage because even a general from the Pentagon and 4 other officials testified in trial, saying that they were not spies. It was impossible for them to be spies because to be a spy you have to have secret information from a government. And so they were not spies. They could not be charged with spying, and during the trial they changed the convictions for, the charges, the counts for conspiracy to commit espionage or conspiracy to commit a crime against the United States government, because if they didn't commit a crime or they didn't commit espionage, then they would be charged with conspiracy to do this, because the prosecution believed that someday they will do it, and they were conspiring to. It's the only case in the history of the United States where they have the same sentences of alleged spies who not only have had the same sentences, but some of them just recently, a Russian spy who really had secret information from the U.S. government was immediately deported back to Russia. But in this case, because it's against Cuba, not against 5 men, they have had long sentences that go from 15 years to 2 life terms plus 15 years. And they have been separated. They're in different states in the United States. Some of them, 2 of them, my father and Gerardo, they haven't even had the possibility of having regular visits from their wives because they have been denied a visa to visit them. And since then, the whole family, along with the Cuban people who have suffered from this terrorist action, yes, that's why you see on the video that they are seen as heroes in Cuba. we have been struggling to get people to know about this case so that we can make justice. We have won the support of many people. We have won the support of 10 Nobel Prizes. The presidents of so many countries, for instance, actual president of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, who himself was a political prisoner in the war against apartheid, and he has said publicly that he supports the case of the five and he wants the freedom. Three of these five are young people. They live in Cuba, they study, they have their families, and they went to the United States, leaving their family aside to make this mission. They were young. They fought in Angola against apartheid. They are people who have sense of justice and who have been strong in jail because right now the support of many organizations all around the world is enormous. We have more than 3,065 committees of solidarity with the Cuban Five, and we have joined forces with many people, parliament men and women from many countries. Just from the United Kingdom, we have the support of 101 parliament people, and so right now we are hoping that the United States government will finally do what they should have done a long time ago, which is to free the Cuban Five. Meanwhile, their relatives, as me, are still fighting. Some of us, like their wives, their moms, some of them, because some of the moms have died while their sons are in prison. And the kids that are older, because some of them, like my sister, is only 12 years old because she was 4 months old when my father was arrested. So we have been going everywhere to get the solidarity that we know we receive every time somebody studies the case. That's why we are very thankful to be here in this university, to have the chance to speak to students. It's been amazing what we have been able to achieve every time we speak to young people, to students that are also willing, not always willing to take risk if that's in the name of justice, and to fight shoulder to shoulder for a just cause. That's why I'm very grateful to be here, grateful for those who have given me this opportunity, and I'm sure that later we can share some questions and answers.
Yes, thank you very much. We will also, of course, get back to with further questions, but before that, we will also give Kenneth Lewis the chance to speak about the case. And could you please begin by presenting yourself?
Yes, I'm an attorney here in Stockholm, born in the United States, and I come from Miami. So I know a little bit about the place. I have worked with human rights all my life. Began in the civil rights movement in the United States, and have gone on with that and many other activities ever since. I came in contact with this case some years ago, when at the time I was the president of Lawyers Without Borders here in Sweden, which I'm not anymore. And I found it to be a very important case from the point of view of international law and international human rights. I'm not going, as a lawyer, I'm cautious. I'm not going to take a position on all the specifics of the case, but as a lawyer, I think it could be interesting for you to hear my opinion about the problem as to whether or not the Cuban Five have been accorded a fair trial or not. And fair trial is a concept which is internationally accepted and which is part of the International Convention on Political and Civilian Rights from the United Nations, which the United States has ratified and is obliged to follow. Now, there were a series of problems in this case. I won't talk about the politics now. I can do that in the question and answer period. Now I'm speaking to you only as a lawyer. The first and most important problem, already at the time of the preparation of the trial, I think should be emphasized. These suspects. They were, after all, only suspects at that time, had not been convicted of any crime, were kept in solitary confinement. All of the documents in the case were made secret according to a special act in the United States, CIPA, which meant that, number one, they were not free to choose which lawyers they would like to defend them, that only lawyers who were approved to be party to secret documents could be accepted as counsel for the defense. So already there was a limitation to their rights. They were limited in their access to their lawyers, and because of the fact that all these documents, most of the documents, by the way, had been seized in their own homes. I mean, these were documents which they themselves had in their homes. They were all made secret so that they were not allowed to have them. The lawyers were allowed, under very, very primitive circumstances, to go down in the cellar in the courthouse and look at these thousands of pages of documents and could not even make a copy. They could only make notes. And then they changed the numbers on the pages of the documents, so that if they said that in document C and so on page C and so, we want that document brought to court, you couldn't ever find it again because they changed the page number. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but this is the only case I've seen which is equivalent to this was the trial of Mr. Öcalan in Turkey, where the lawyers, in fact, were not allowed to do their job. He had lots of lawyers, and he was allowed to meet them, but never alone, and it was a scandal. But that's Turkey, after all, and that was many years ago. This is the United States, which prides itself, and has a constitution, by the way, which does guarantee some basic rights. So this was the first problem, that according to the ICCPR Convention, everyone is entitled to a fair trial, and included in that right is the right to prepare your defense, to have access to the materials, the accusations made against you, and to be able then to prepare your defense. Because if you don't have access to the documents, it's very difficult to do it. And you must also have the right, a more or less unlimited right, to meet your attorney to discuss the case. And these rights were denied these 5 Cuban suspects at that time. Then there came the point when they were finally going to be brought to trial in 2001. And the defense attorneys argued that there must be a change of venue. That means that the trial should not be held in Miami-Dade County because of the hostile atmosphere in that area.